call today's sermon Glorifying God in a Crisis. In our Gospel reading from John 17 today, we know it was Jesus' parting prayer to his Father that he be glorified through the lives of his disciples. Well, what does that mean? What does it really mean? Is it confined to a matter of simply knowing about Christ, understanding what our faith means and believing it? Or does it require us to do certain things or behave in a particular way? Are we purely cerebral or practical or both? What about us as his disciples? How should we respond? And how can we carry on the honour and the responsibility of glorifying God? What can we do to glorify God when our world is in a state of collapse? As his witnesses, we live out an extraordinary paradox by being simultaneously so small individually, yet we are offered gifts of great importance to do our job. Certainty, courage, confidence, strength, hope and grace. We have been in lockdown now for about 10 weeks, some for longer, for example those with coexisting diseases or our elders, and of course it could be a great deal longer. In our readings today, we saw glory being shone in the darkest of places. There can be no darker time than that of Jesus' crucifixion, yet there shone the greatest glory. There still shines the greatest of glories. Yes, these are dark times. They're the darkest times in living memory, yet we are still seeing much evidence of glorifying God. Let's explore that now. In the past, Christians have always been at the epicenter of social reform, from the abolition of the slave trade to the relatively recent global campaign called Jubilee 2000, where $100 billion of debt from the world's 35 poorest countries were written off. The church has been associated with education, art, medicine, social welfare, justice and politics for the whole of its very long history. Well, the church buildings may be currently closed, but the church, its people, are very much out there, being the church. And it is instrumental in leading the way in helping our current society consider how we wish our society to be when lockdown finally ends. Church will fundamentally be involved with how we want to rebuild that future. And when I say church, I do mean us. Food banks, for example, they're an obvious one. Here in Haverhill, our food bank, Reach, is a Christian endeavour, doing far more than simply providing food. It supports local people to get out of debt with dignity. It glorifies God by glorifying other people. Churches have developed phone banks for the isolated, online prayer support, and an increasing number of ways to worship God online. through to an army of willing volunteers to do food shopping, medicine collection for those locked down at home. The internet has allowed many more churches to broadcast their services. A survey published on May the 5th of this year suggested that 25% of UK adults had tuned into a religious service since lockdown began, and the majority are in the age group of 18 to 35. Many are seeking God for the very first time and are finding the love and encouragement they badly need. For our church here in Haverhill, we can see that our viewing numbers are 4 times higher than the number of people who had been coming regularly to our Sunday services. Well, that's an extraordinary number of people watching, and I thank God for that, and pray that all are encouraged by what they hear. At this time, more people than ever are recognising their basic human need to connect with their innate spirituality. People are searching for that perennial question and the answer. There must be more to life than this. It might be that finding out more about Christian life will answer that question for you. Our contact details can be found on our website. Look for Methodist Church, Haverhill, UK. And I encourage you to make contact with us if you wish to know more about the Christian life. The COVID-19 crisis that we are living through has held up a mirror to society, and there is much that we don't like looking at. Crises on this scale gives our society to have the rare opportunity to ask questions about who we are and about our place in the world. In his Easter sermon, the Archbishop of Canterbury said this: "After so much suffering, so much heroism from key workers and the NHS, we cannot be content to go back to what was before as if all is normal. There needs to be a resurrection of our common life." We have such an opportunity to reimagine how we want our world to be. What part do we want to play in this great reshaping of our society, locally, nationally, and internationally? What will we choose to do? How will we refocus our attention onto God? In a recent YouGov poll, only 9% of responders said they wanted life to return to normal, whatever that is, once the lockdown is over. And so 91% of us want to see a change. What part of that change do we want to be? I have personally appreciated the enforced slowing down and having time to think about what really matters to me. Also knowing truly who is important to me, and confirming that money isn't everything, but having enough is. And I want to carry on those realizations into my new future. All over the world, communities are displaying an incredible capacity for kindness, courage, and sacrificial love. I mean that people are demonstrating human love at a personal cost to themselves. Just thinking of nurses as an example, doctors, nurses, all other hospital workers, care workers, teachers, food industry workers, police. Well, the list just goes on. At street level, there are countless community initiatives that millions are involved with. In fact, they are exploring what it means to love thy neighbour. Many of us are having full conversations with our neighbours for the first time. Kindnesses are being demonstrated with new relationships close to home. The slower pace has enabled deeper conversations. God's eternal glory is shining through previously closed doors, gently introducing the hope of a better future to more people than ever before. I hold on firmly to the hope that we are seeing restored values that could shape a brighter future for us all. As a Christian, I firmly believe that God's intention is for peace, or shalom. I try very hard not to use churchy words, but this is a really good one. Shalom means a peace so total that it is beyond what any human can understand. Think of it as a restoration of, or restoring of balance, achieving balance. Think of shalom as a state of complete tranquility, where everything is as it should be, where everyone is connected to each other peaceably, and it is just right. Think of God's shalom as the complete opposite of chaos, and who amongst us wouldn't want some of that? Shalom describes a world which reflects back all of the love and beauty of God. Amidst my natural anxieties, I am hopeful there is a growing awareness that we can't continue living as if we, the individual, are the only ones that matter. I've often heard people say that our culture has been all about me, me, and me, when everything that we do has the potential to affect everyone else. For example, this virus, which began in China. Because of international travel, the whole world has been infected. We are all deeply connected to each other and with every speck of God's creation. We will do well to remember that mankind is a team creation. I am hopeful of witnessing a sea change in how we value life. Mankind has in recent times placed economic prosperity above human life. Not just human life, but all life. How often have we despaired at the increasing number in our own country who are homeless? There has always been that argument that there simply isn't that amount of money to rehouse them all, and also that they wouldn't adapt. In response to the pandemic, hotels have opened their doors, fed them, cared for them as precious guests, and found that the majority adapt with no difficulty at all. And plans are now in place to rehouse them when the pandemic recedes. We have an unexpected golden opportunity to refuse to define people by their economic value or social status. For all are priceless in the eyes of God. All are glorious in the eyes of God. We can, if we choose, reboot the world in a completely different direction that would correct the racial, economic and many other inequalities that have been exposed as a result of this crisis. We can justifiably place the climate emergency at centre stage. Our world seems to have reacted violently to the abuse that man has subjected it to for generations. Think on this. Our vast destruction of the natural environment has made it more likely that viruses can jump species and make their way into humankind. The disease appears to have originated from a Wuhan seafood market where wild animals, including marmots, birds, rabbits, bats and snakes, along with domesticated dogs and cats, are traded illegally, often caged together cruelly in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. Acknowledging that in this case there is a social element or cultural element, I am optimistic that the world shining its disapproving light, the culture will adapt eventually to confirm a simple truth. COVID-19 is not a natural disaster, but a disaster largely of our own making. So while the world is paused, while we can see nature blossoming as we stop meddling with it, let us draw hope that we can, individually and collectively, influence our future and glorify God in the process. If you want to be part of the change, Tear Fund have launched a new toolkit that can be used to prompt discussion between family, friends or small groups. It will help us explore how we can all take part in shaping this big reboot of our society and our economy. For more information, you can visit www.tearfund.org/reboot. Amen. Before we close with a final song, I would like us to spend a few minutes together reflecting on some questions. Be quiet in your soul. Close your eyes if you wish, or watch the image as I speak a few words. Where have I seen God's glory this week? In creation, in activity, in other people, how do I react to God's glory? And how do I want to react? How do I feel about being in the midst of the glory of God? How can I help that glory shine through? Amen. And now we have our final prayer and blessing. Unite us in your glory, loving God, that you may be more clearly seen in the world. Go into the world to show God's glory, and may you always know God's blessing and God's peace. Amen. We end now with our final song, gloriously sung at the Royal Albert Hall. To God be the glory.